829, turn left base, runway 26.
American 829, Albuquerque Tower, runway 26, clear to land.
To land, American 829.
Those are weak-hearted, especially those who are seeking higher spiritual experience. They seem to prey on those who have a type of...
You must be the pilot.
Where were you coming from?
Can you tell the way I'm shaking?
Tonight.
We're out of Double Eagle, just practicing.
Oh, yeah? You're from here?
Yeah. Plains Base, Double Eagle.
So you were coming in. Here comes Catherine. Good.
Hey, can I grab you after this? It's all Friday.
You want to do it?
Well, we can go do it.
I'm here, John. I'm with Channel 7. What happened?
Well, I don't know. Will you allow her to see your footage? He got it. He got it all on tape. Well, our nose wheel broke on takeoff at Double Eagle. It was just hanging there.
On takeoff it broke, and you didn't know this?
No, we knew it.
And so you tried to land immediately?
No. We wanted to get up and sort out what was going on. No, as we took off and retracting the gear, we heard a large thump. So we continued to climb out, and then it was clear that the nose gear hadn't come up. And then we determined the linkage was broken. It was just hanging free. We tried to crank it down with the emergency crank, and it was obvious the linkage was broken.
So then what happened?
Well, we flew around for quite a while, tried to get some ideas from people what we could do. Flew by the tower, and they confirmed that it was just hanging free. And we did some maneuvers, tried to do some radical descents and climbs to try to swing it out, and it didn't work, so we decided to come and land.
And how critical is that nose gear to landing?
That's the most important thing. If that falls out, then you're going to wipe out both engines, both props, and no telling what else.
Any idea what could cause that to break down on you?
Well, apparently the motor or the linkage broke on takeoff when we were retracting the gear.
So you saw the tape now, and you saw what it looked like. What do you think happened, and how do you feel after seeing that tape?
If I'd have seen that tape ahead of time, because it was obvious on the tape of the landing that the gear was just swinging like that, and then we determined that when we landed, we were going to both pull back as hard as we could on the yoke, and keep the nose in. And when we did that, thank God, the nose gear swung forward and locked.
So you landed safely because the nose gear got into place?
Yeah.
What got it into place?
I guess the impact when we hit on the mains and jerked the yoke back so hard, it slung the nose gear forward. You can see on that tape, it just slung it forward and locked in place. I think the angels gave us a little help there. We were praying all the way down.
So what were you thinking when you came down? Your partner could see it out the mirror. I mean, he could see that it was, you knew it was just hanging free. What were you thinking?
I was figuring we were going to wipe out both engines, both props, and you know, after we landed, I was still holding back as hard as I could on the yoke, trying to keep the nose up as high as I could, and trying to shut the engines down and get the props stopped, and they finally stopped, and the nose was coming down. I kept waiting for that terrible grinding sound, and it never came.
So for someone like myself who doesn't know a lot about aviation, how rare and unique is this for you to have a safe landing with a broken nose wheel?
I can't, I've never heard of it happening before, because you can see it swinging free, and then when we hit and jerked the nose up, it went forward and locked. If it hadn't have done that, or if we'd have landed when it was swinging back and forth, when it was swinging back and landed in, we would have wiped it out.
So
What were you thinking your chances of survival were?
Oh, this is the kind of thing you usually walk away from, but you do major damage to the airplane.
How old is the plane? What kind of plane is it?
It's a 1968 Cessna 320.
And are you from Albuquerque? Is
Yeah,
that right?
and this is the owner C.E. Chisholm over here. I'm giving him lessons. He's just bought the plane. He's working on his multi-engine.
So it was the two of you in there?
Yeah.
And was this his first lesson?
No, he's had several.
So who was flying it then?
Well, I did the landing.
But who did the takeoff?
He did the takeoff.
But you took over once you realized what was going on?
Well, after we did the takeoff, we heard this big crash bang, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "Just ignore it. Continue your takeoff, because you don't want to get distracted." And then after we got up to altitude, we sorted it out. He could see it in the mirror. He figured out what was wrong. And then we came into landing. It was kind of a team effort, because I told him when we touch down, we're both going to have to grab that yoke as hard as we can, pull it back as far as we can. And so we both did the final thing that managed to knock it loose.
Any final thoughts on what you've been through this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm going to go to church this afternoon and try to relax.
Can we get the spelling of your name?
I did kiss the ground when I got out of the plane.
Could we get your spelling on your first and last name, John?
Okay.
John.
John is Kusianovich.
How do you pronounce that?
Kusianovich.
John?
Yeah.
The faulty wheel finally locked back into place, and the pilot says they were lucky they didn't crash.
Hit on the mains and jerked the yoke back so hard it slung the nose gear forward. You can see on that tape, it just slung it forward and locked in place. I think the angels gave us a little help there. We were praying all the way down.
The other man on board had just bought the Cessna and was taking lessons from Kusanovich.
That type of landing can be very ugly. Catherine Martinez joins us now from the airport with more on that landing that pretty much defied the odds. Catherine?
Johnny and Laura, the nose wheel or nose gear is what gives the plane, along with the rudder, directional control upon landing. Now, in this case, that gear broke just after takeoff, leaving the pilots to wonder if they would ever get down safely. The worried pilots circled the runway for about 2 hours. Finally, they decided they had no choice but to land with the broken nose wheel. And how critical is that nose gear to landing?
That's the most important thing.
Incredibly, the plane landed without a hitch. No one knows why, but just before touchdown, the gear locked into place. Had the landing gear not locked into place properly at the last minute, Kusanovich says most certainly the crash would have destroyed both the propellers and the engines. Both men are veteran pilots. They say they've never seen anything like it.
I think the angels gave us a little help there. We were praying all the way down.
Said somebody in this cockpit's got connections, and it ain't me. I assumed it was John.
Chisholm recently bought this plane. He was still learning how to fly it. Any regrets?
No, it's a good airplane. It's going to be a great airplane now. It shows how lucky it is, right?
Or was it something else that preserved this plane from certain doom? The pilot says this model Cessna 320 is known for nose gear problems, but he says there is no way to know exactly what caused the breakage. He says, quote, sometimes these things just happen. Johnny and Lori, back to you.
Catherine, do you think the pilots' lives were ever in danger?
Well, Johnny, they tell me that even if the nose gear had not locked in properly, they think they would have walked away from this, barring, of course, that nothing else had gone wrong.
That's right. Well, they were lucky no matter how you look at it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Albuquerque residents have a lot more open space to
circle the airport for 3 hours after their landing gear failed to operate. Emergency crews rushed to the airport after hearing a plane was in trouble. John Kusianovich and C.E. Chisholm say as their twin-engine plane lifted off from the runway, they heard a thump.
We knew we had a problem. We just didn't know what it was.
They looked back and saw the plane's nose gear dangling, unable to lock in the landing position. For the next 3 hours, the two were forced to maneuver their plane in the air, trying to get the gear back into place.
So we start then doing dives and pulling up, trying to swing the gear down in position. And we got mechanics on the phone, and we flew for about 2.5, 3 hours trying to get the gear down.
In the meantime, they needed to burn off some fuel to prevent fire danger in case the plane tumbled on the runway.
Well, you don't want fuel in the auxiliary tanks, and we burned that out.
They were eventually able to land the plane safely, and no one was hurt. Both say they are lucky the flight ended the way it did.